Hey guys, it's me, producer Ross, and welcome back to another edition of My ITFC. And today is an absolute pleasure to be joined by Kes Hawkins. Kes, how you been doing, my friend, during this situation we're in? Strange times we're living in. How you been doing?
Indeed, mate. Yeah. Strange year. I think lockdown maybe came at the right time for me. Earlier on in the year, sort of been through a lot of like stressful stuff, and I had the stressful process of changing jobs just before that. And then it sort of came about and slowed the pace of life down a little bit, so which was probably what I needed at the time, because I would have just burnt out otherwise. But I was still going into work 5 days a week, but everything was much less frantic and much less muddled. So I'm kind of one of the fortunate ones that was able to use that whole period as just a bit of reflection time, and sort of not a lot of people can say that, because they're sort of they were really up against it. So I was, like I say, one of the fortunate ones in that respect. Well, like Town were inescapable in my household as a child. Basically, my mum was PR manager for the company that sponsored Town in the mid-90s through to the mid-90s through to the early noughties. So she was often in and around the club doing various bits and pieces. Often including on match days, and then also my older brother. There's sort of 6.5 year age gap between us. He was a big Town fan, as were his friends, and I completely looked up to them growing up as a kid and sort of idolised them. So, and because of that, like, just my dad by default became involved. Like he's not a big football man or anything like that, but he was just sort of involved by association. So he would often like take my brother along and that kind of thing. So Ipswich Town they were a constant presence in my early life. And then by the age of 6, I was swept up by it all, man. And I remember going along to games fairly frequently, from the age of 5 or 6. My mum would have to stick it, she'd take me along. But then she'd often have to stick around at the club after full time on match days and sort of like networking and what have you, doing whatever she was doing. So my brother would then sort of take me around and we'd hunt for players to get autographs from. And that was my Saturdays as a kid. So I just fell in love from there, really.
Now, can you remember your first Town game?
No idea. But this is much. I've talked about this so much in my family, because there's no record of it from anyone in my family, which saddens me, because I'm a sentimental person, and I would sort of want something like that to have been kept aside for posterity. But no, I would have been really young, like maybe 3 or 4, so it would have been around 95, 96 sort of time. My mum probably took me along, but probably just through a childcare arrangement. There was probably no one else to look after me that day, so she just had to take me along as part of, to sit with her as part of her work. And well, she does say that on my first game I hated it. I think I kind of just put my coat over my head and sulked all game. Apparently I didn't like the noise and the commotion and everything, but I was really young. So you've got to sort of let me off for that one. But I remember the first game I went to without my mum.
Okay.
And my dad and brother, and I think a couple of my brother's mates went along as well with us to the playoff semi against Charlton in 97-98. Okay. We lost 1-0, and Jamie Clapham scored an own goal. And I didn't understand the concept of own goals at the time. So I was 5 years old. And I thought I just saw a player in a blue shirt putting a ball in the back of the net and thought that was a good thing. So kind of had a rude awakening to that concept that day, I'd say Matt Holland stands out above all, and I'll come on to him in a sec, but I loved David Johnson as a kid when I was good. So watching him, he was an exciting player. Every time he got the ball in the final third, it felt like something was going to happen. We were going to create a chance, or we were going to score. And he knew where the back of the net was. He was prolific. And I love the chant we had for him. It was like, Johnson, 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 born is the king of born. I love that. So really, massive fan of him. I loved Martin Rusa as well, and like Sisto Peralta later on after that. They were probably the two where their technical ability stands out above the rest. They were sort of quite cultured players, gifted on the ball. They knew sexy football, those two, you know. Tommy Miller, fantastic, like box-to-box engine midfielder, scored all types of goals. But there was a nice temperament as well to Tommy Miller. He played the game sort of he was one of those players that always just looked like they were enjoying playing football, you know. But yeah, above all, I think I'd have to say Matt Holland, phenomenal leader and captain. Gave you 7 or 8 out of 10 every single game. He was so consistent throughout sort of some very good years supporting the club, and always came across like a true gent as well. You know, like I've never known anyone to say a bad thing about who's met Matt Holland. And I think I did meet him a couple of times. I was mascot, and he was very friendly to me then. I think around 2001. So yeah, he made a big impression on me. But yeah, he'd be number one, man. He'd had to stand out above all as my favourite Town player. Well, that would have to be George Burley, obviously. What a man. He was just, you know, Mr. Ipswich. Had us playing just a really attractive brand of football. Created a legacy of obviously sort of that promotion season, and then taking us back into Europe, which I was lucky enough to sort of be. I was a season ticket holder for both those seasons in the Premiership and so obviously saw us playing Europe as a result. So yeah, because without him, would have all of these fond memories I have been possible? I don't know. But Joe Royle as well. Again, we played both of these managers, Joe Royle and George Burley. When you look back at, you'd go to Portman Road under those two managers, and you'd expect Ipswich Town to win a game of football. It didn't matter who the opposition were. You could expect Ipswich to actually go there and bring the game to another team, you know, and sort of put in a performance and quite often win. So, which we haven't, and they just created winning mentalities in the club, which I don't think that we've seen since. We haven't had a winning mentality in the club since even the season under McCarthy, where we made it to the playoffs. It was still like, what are we doing here? You know, there was an element of surprise about it. So yeah, no, those two have the most affection for. I have the most affection for, and it's so gutting, I think, for Joe Royle that he didn't get us promoted in that 04-05 season, because we were well worthy of it.
You've gone to probably a lot of games, so trying to just pick one favourite game you've gone and watched live is going to be hard, but I'm happy to have
actually, when I looked through the questions, I think that was the easiest one, because I was there for the 5-3 playoff semi-final versus Bolton in 2000. I would have been 7 years old. In the 20 years since that game, I've never seen such an entertaining, topsy-turvy, nerve-wracking, pulsating game of football. It had absolutely everything, you know, 8 goals, 3 penalties, 2 red cards, hat-trick hero, last-minute equaliser, and of course, and it went in our favour. But I'd been to the semi-final as well, the playoff semi versus Bolton the previous year in '99, where we lost out on away goals after an equally mental game. So I hated Bolton after that, and fortunately we were able to avenge that the following year. But I went to the game with my dad, who, like I said, wasn't a huge football man, and he was quite stoic at the best of times in general. And then I was also with a friend of mine, who he was like one of these kids that supported like 3 football teams, you know, like, so he like, obviously it was exciting for them, but they weren't invested in it in the same way that I was. And I remember when that equaliser went in, and the subsequent 2 goals after that, like Jimmy Gilton scored in the last minute to make it 3-3, and then we scored 2 in extra time to seal the win. But for those 3 goals, I'm going completely nuts just with the like random old fella in the seat next to me. You know, I think when the fifth goes in, he's lifted me off my feet and sort of just shook me. And but yeah, and that's the power of football in moments like that. It can sort of just unite people, young and old, and of all backgrounds. But yeah, that's definitely the best game that I've ever watched, and probably the best that Portman Road's ever seen. I know that there's a lot of debate about that now. But yeah, I think a lot of people would say the same. So I was lucky enough to be there for Alan Armstrong's goal against Inter Milan. That's got a special place in my heart. We'd somehow all game been knocking on the door against Inter Milan, which was crazy when you think about it. But midway through the second half, Jamie Clapham pings in this pinpoint cross, and Armstrong still looks like he's got a lot to do, because if you watch the goal, he's kind of tracking backwards, like as he connects with it. But then he connects with it so well, and just sends this looping header over the keeper. And what I feel is just so privileged to have been there for it, because that's like my little piece of attachment to Town's decorated European history with the unbeaten home record and all of that. So yeah, that's definitely up there. I loved Danny Haynes' second goal. I think it was in the 2006 East Anglian derby. I think there's a shot that rebounds off the Norwich defender, and then Haynes picks it up on the outside of the box, and he just sort of places this lovely shot of the inside of his foot that goes in off the post, and that was it. 3-1, job done. That was my first ever taste of victory against Norwich, actually. So that was a great feeling. But ultimately, I think none of them compare to Rusa Premiership. I was there that day at Wembley. Again, lucky enough to be there. And Naylor scrapping away, just winning that ball in the centre circle, and feeds it through to Martin Rusa. On as a sub, but it's one-on-one against a tired centre half, and he takes a touch, and then I thought that he was gonna just maybe take another one and try and go round the keeper and just slot it into an empty net, but he just takes one touch and then bam, just fires this rocket into the roof of the net, and the rest, as they say, is history. You know, so yeah, that's got to be my favourite Town goal. This one's cool, isn't it? I think this is the 92 one, so that's the year of my birth. So I like this little stringy bit here. But again, I'll probably hark back to my childhood and go for the 97 to 99 home strip. Centre badge, white sleeves, collar. Sleeves had like that Kappa-esque trim with the horses going down it. That was and they had that on the shorts as well. That was a thing of beauty. I think that was my first ever kit as well. The first one I owned. Also, just really like the early noughties, the first Power Gen one in the Royal era. Nice, very minimalistic, simplistic kit with that sort of not lovely deep blue colour, and then the white on the sides. So I was a big fan of that. That was cool.
Any away kits to mention as well?
The cream black and red Abbott A1 from, I think, again, that was 97 to 99. That would have been one of the first ones I owned as well. I remember picking it up at the Suffolk show. I love that one. The orange one the orange one from that around that era as well, the late 90s. That was cool. I liked that. Worst moment would have, I think, one of them would have been 5-1 loss to Norwich at home in 2011, I think, to Paul Lambert's Norwich, of course. I'd already seen us get tonked at Carrow Road earlier that season, and I was kind of hoping the stage was set for that to be avenged. I was 18 years old, so I think it was the first East Anglian derby I could legally drink for. 7:45 p.m. kickoff for Thursday before Good Friday, so I was hoping it was going to be electric. And my car broke down on the way there. I think it was like something. It was like a punk, like a flat tire, or I'd ran out of petrol or something like really embarrassing like that. So I got just sort of to Ipswich really late. Like not really late, but like sort of not with much time to soak things up before kick-off, which you've got to do on the day of the East Anglian Derby, you know. So I was annoyed about that, but then I'd had trouble getting a ticket, getting hold of a ticket. So I was like in a restricted view seat with a pole in my view, which was annoying. And then obviously what happened on the pitch was a complete and utter farce. Like that, we were just absolutely outplayed, you know, and it was just a real schooling. But I will say, like I say, I do try and throw myself into the mix of the atmosphere as best I can in any game. But that night had the potential to sort of be this really sort of vibrant, buzzing atmosphere about town, but it felt like there were a lot of people there that evening who maybe weren't proper town fans. There are a lot of people there who perhaps there just for a piss up or to get Larry. There was, and it was just like, obviously after the game, the atmosphere wasn't great. But before as well, I just felt that there was quite an ugly atmosphere throughout the entire experience. So, yeah, hated every minute of that one. But also the last time I watched Town was the 1-0 loss at home to Fleetwood back in March. And that was a really drab, insipid game of football on a cold March evening. And of course, the atmosphere got quite toxic that evening, and I just came away from it feeling so angry and so like bitter. I just felt so and just with all this anger towards Marcus Evans and towards Paul Lambert and towards the players that were on the pitch that night. And I just sort of like felt like what's happening to my club? You know, I watched Town beat Inter Milan when I was a wee youngster, and now I've just seen us lose 1-0 at home to Fleetwood and drop to 10th place in the third tier of English football. And it just felt like it wasn't fun anymore. You know, like it was one of those nights where you feel like football is there as escapism in a way. It's there to take you out of your life, and it felt like that night football was just adding to life stresses. You know, it was like I was like, why do I bother? So obviously the football season was curtailed about a week after that. So we were quite lucky in that respect to not be subjected to any more, because I was just really beginning to lose sight of things that night.
And it was cold as well. It makes it worse.
Yeah,
makes it worse when it's a terrible game and you are just freezing your nuts off. Basically, is not, you know, ideal.
Well, yeah, but it's like we could have played into the early hours of the morning. We would not have scored. We didn't. I don't remember us threatening their goal once. And I was like, this is Fleetwood. Obviously, I know that Fleetwood they're a decent side in League One. That I think Joey Barton's doing a terrific job with them as a small club. But yeah, so, like really, are we not even going to offer something? You know? It was horrible. I'm reliving it now, just talking about it. Moment is an interesting one, because if you take a moment in and of itself without all the context attached to it, like Paul Anderson's equaliser against Norwich, right, where in the playoff semi-final in 2015, where we'd been through a fair few bad years, like as a club, and like that day, Portman Road was 30,000 full. It was like, and it's the best atmosphere I think I've seen, obviously, since the ground was redeveloped. It was like absolutely packed, and we'd started really well, and the goal kind of the goal came against the run of play, and the Norwich's goal, and then we obviously equalised that Paul Anderson goal. And I don't think I've never celebrated a Town goal like it, because it just felt like it was attached to all of these. It was a glimmer of hope in what had been sort of like quite like not very interesting times to support Ipswich Town, and it felt like at that moment, you know, we could have gone on and actually done something special that season. So that was in and of itself, that's a fantastic moment. I was back like, and again, I was there with my brother, so we were watching football together as adults as we had done as kids. And it really felt like I thought we were going to go on and win that game and ultimately win the tie. Sadly, it wasn't to be, and that all unravelled. So I can't say I would 100% not say that, but I think it does deserve a mention. But Wembley 2000 would have been my best experience as a Town fan. Like, it was just the best day ever. Just from start to finish, sort of like walking up, like obviously the last domestic game of football under the old Wembley, so you walk up like past the Twin Towers, the Twin Towers looking over you, and then sort of getting into the stadium and just being surrounded by a sea of blue. Like, that was really good that day, because like one side of Wembley was completely just covered in blue, and then the other side was Barnsley red. It just looked like it really did look so cool, just being there that day and just seeing all the flags waving and everything like that. And then starting out sort of with that Richard Wright own goal and thinking like that was like that sort of really like all the excitement and hype, and then we go 1-0 down and think, oh, actually we might not go on and win this, and sort of having to face that reality that it wasn't just a day out and you really wanted us to win that game of football. And then just obviously the penalty save in the 45th, just before half time after we'd equalised. I think that was what set the tone for what happened in the rest of the game. And so we've already talked about Roos's goal going in, and I just just the pure elation of that, and then coming home on the train and sort of getting into the car and sort of like driving back from Ipswich Station and sort of seeing people dancing arm in arm like on the streets, and then like on St Matthew's roundabout on Norwich Road, and we were all sort of dancing on that roundabout, and going back and watching like just like sort of watching the highlights at I think there was about 4 different Look Easts that night where they were just showing the highlights of that game. And then I was allowed to go out with my dad and my brother and his friends, and we just drove around town beeping the horn about like late at night, but there was still people celebrating everywhere. And then the celebrations on the Cornhill the next day with the bus and all that. That was and then of course, which we've not even touched on, the season that followed it, where we finished fifth in the Premier League, just which is beggars belief now. You know, sort of what a time to be a Town fan. I do feel really lucky to have had these memories, because we're not going to see anything like that again as Ipswich Town fans. You know, we're not going to see us finish 5th in the top flight. We're not going to see us win European games, and that's not obviously partly to do with where we're at as a club at the moment, but partly because of sort of just the vast inequalities in the game of football. It's going to be very rare that you see teams like Ipswich achieve stuff like that. So, like, what's the best we can hope for as Town fans? To be sort of treading water as a top flight side. That's probably like, you know, sort of a yo-yo side between the top flight and the second tier, which obviously is we're even a long way off that now as it stands. So we need a sort of like a complete structural overhaul if that's ever going to happen as well. But it's still, it's not the same as having those experiences of actually, sort of winning things and competing in the higher reaches of English football. So no, I feel, and that obviously that day at Wembley was what started it all, what started out that incredible journey, you know.
Well, Kes, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Hearing your memories, definitely from, you know, your being made bigger now, where you
Yeah.
are now. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
you'll be ours. And I want to give you a little cheeky plug. You're currently now doing your own podcast, so I thought I'll let
Yes.
you take it away. Let people know what it is, and maybe people who may be watching this could get involved as well.
Yeah. So it's a fledgling project. It's it's only the second one that was put out yesterday. It's called Over the Orwell, and it's just basically championing local Ipswich and Suffolk culture. So just anyone who's doing anything creative, independent, and sort of an innovative in the Ipswich area, just kind of getting those types of individuals on and having a bit of a chat about their stuff. So yesterday I had Max of Blue Action on. So town fans will be familiar with the work that Blue Action do with regards to displays in the stadium and that sort of thing. So that was a really good chat. We sat for about an hour and a half and talked all things football in Ipswich Town. And hopefully there'll be more to come, but not just in a football related sense, but sort of with local artists and musicians and all that kind of thing, just championing everything that is great about Ipswich. And hopefully you and your bearded self will be on there sometime.
Possibly, yeah. We'll wait and see, everybody. But it's been an absolute pleasure, my friends. Thank you for coming on. And everybody who's watching this, check out Kes's podcast, Over the Orwell. And we'll see you then. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks, Ross. Absolute pleasure. Cheers, mate.